I had always believed my marriage was safe, something I could lean on no matter how hard the world outside became. For years I carried the image of a partner who understood me, who would never let me feel lonely or unseen. But somewhere along the line, that comfort turned into routine, and routine hardened into silence. The conversations that once stretched late into the night faded into short exchanges about bills, errands, and responsibilities. He still loved me in his way, but love without attention feels like distance, and distance grows into a wall that no one acknowledges until it becomes impossible to climb. I tried to ignore the emptiness at first, convincing myself it was normal for passion to cool with time, that comfort should be enough. But inside I was restless. I caught myself envying strangers in restaurants who leaned close, laughing at private jokes, or couples who still held hands like they were afraid of losing each other. Those little moments were reminders of what I once had but no longer felt. I wanted to be desired, to be noticed, to feel the spark that told me I mattered beyond the roles of wife and homemaker. I kept telling myself that I should be grateful for stability, but gratitude is difficult when your heart aches for warmth that never comes. Nights became the hardest. Lying in bed beside him, I would listen to his steady breathing while staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying memories of the early years when even silence between us felt full of meaning. Now silence felt like a chasm, swallowing every unspoken need I was too afraid to voice. I didn't want to sound ungrateful, needy, or weak. So I smiled during the day, kept up appearances, and told myself this was the sacrifice of marriage, security traded for passion. But deep down, I knew something was breaking. It wasn't anger or betrayal that weakened me. It was loneliness. Loneliness has a way of making you doubt your worth, of whispering that maybe you're not beautiful enough, not exciting enough, not lovable enough. And when those doubts take root, you start searching, sometimes without even realizing it, for someone to prove you wrong. I noticed it most when others showed me small acts of kindness. A compliment at the market, a co-worker's lingering eye contact, or even a neighbor stopping to chat a little longer than usual. These gestures filled me with a brief, dangerous warmth. Not because I wanted them, but because they reminded me that I could still be wanted. And with every reminder, my patience at home grew thinner. I found myself waiting, hoping he would notice me, reach for me, ask about my day in a way that felt sincere. But he never did, and I never asked. We drifted in our quiet routine, and I carried my hunger for affection like a secret no one could see. That hunger was the seed of everything that followed. It didn't happen all at once. It started with subtle cracks in the foundation, the quiet ache of being unseen, the silent desire for something more. I told myself I would never cross a line, that loyalty was unshakable. But what I didn't realize then was that betrayal rarely begins with action. It begins in the heart, in the silence of nights where longing grows louder than reason. And I was already closer to the edge than I dared to admit. It happened gradually, almost invisibly, the way storms often gather before anyone notices the darkening sky. He came into my life in the most ordinary way, not with grand gestures but with simple presence. At first, I thought nothing of it. He was just someone who listened, someone who asked questions with genuine interest, someone who looked at me in a way I hadn't been looked at in years. That was all. At least, that's what I told myself. The conversation started casually, light and unimportant. Weather, work, small frustrations. But soon they stretched longer, spilling into hours, touching parts of me I had forgotten needed tending. He remembered little details I mentioned, asked follow-up questions days later, and gave me the kind of attention I had been starving for. I realized how much I craved it the moment I began checking my phone more often, waiting for his messages, feeling the small thrill when his name appeared on the screen. I knew it was dangerous even then. Attention can be intoxicating when you've been deprived of it. I told myself it was harmless, that talking was not a crime, that there was nothing to fear as long as I kept boundaries. But boundaries are fragile when emotions slip through the cracks. The way he looked at me sometimes, the quiet intensity in his eyes, it was like a question I didn't want to answer but couldn't ignore. There were moments I tried to pull back, moments I reminded myself of my vows, my responsibilities, the stability of the life I had built. But every attempt at distance only made his presence louder in my thoughts. He didn't demand anything. He didn't even need to. It was the way he made me feel seen, understood, and wanted, all without asking for anything in return. That subtle pull was stronger than any demand could ever be. And soon, I began to look forward to it. Those conversations, the accidental brushes of his hand when we were close, the stolen glances that lingered just a little too long. I found myself laughing again, feeling alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. The warmth in his presence filled the cold spaces my marriage had left empty. With every passing day, I was walking closer to a line I swore I would never cross, yet I couldn't make myself stop. One evening, when the air between us grew heavy with unspoken tension, I caught myself holding his gaze too long, my chest tight with a mix of fear and desire. It wasn't just a look anymore, it was a spark, undeniable and dangerous. And in that moment, I felt the truth settle inside me. This was no longer just attention. This was temptation. I wanted to believe I was still in control, that I could step back whenever I chose. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. Because what I felt when I was with him wasn't something I could easily silence. It was a hunger that had been building for years, and now it had finally found someone willing to feed it. The question wasn't if I would give in. The question was when. The moment came without warning, though in truth it had been building for weeks, maybe months. Every conversation, every stolen glance, every breathless pause had been guiding us here. It wasn't planned, not in the way people imagine betrayal to be. It wasn't calculated or deliberate. It happened because I didn't stop it, because somewhere inside I didn't want to. We were alone, and the silence between us carried more weight than words ever could. I could feel the shift in the air, that dangerous awareness that something was about to change. My heart raced, my hands trembled slightly, but I didn't pull back. I didn't turn away. And when he moved closer, closing the space that had always been safe until then, I let him. It was such a small decision, to lean in instead of retreat, but it changed everything. The first touch sent a shock through me, a reminder of everything I had been craving: warmth, affection, intensity. For a split second I thought of my marriage, my vows, the years I had built with someone else. But that thought was drowned out by the rush of feeling alive again, wanted again, seen again. And in that instant, my loyalty was no match for my longing. I wish I could say I fought harder, that I resisted, but the truth is I surrendered almost immediately. Every ounce of restraint I had carried broke apart the moment his arms held me, the moment his voice dropped to a whisper that felt like a secret meant only for me. There was no room for guilt then, only desire, only the undeniable relief of giving in to what I had been denying for too long. What shocked me most wasn't the act itself but how natural it felt, as if we had been moving toward this all along. It wasn't clumsy, awkward. It was inevitable, like water finally breaking through a dam that had been straining to hold it back. And I let it happen, knowing full well that once I crossed this line, there would be no going back to the innocence I once clung to. The intensity of it was overwhelming. Every moment burned into my memory, not just because of what we did but because of how it made me feel. For the first time in years, I felt awake, alive, desired. It was intoxicating, a rush so powerful it drowned out reason, drowned out guilt, drowned out everything except the urgency between us. But even in the midst of it, a shadow lingered. A voice deep inside whispered that this was wrong, that I was betraying everything I once promised to protect. That voice was small, buried under layers of passion and adrenaline, but it was there. And when it was over, when the silence returned and reality crept back in, that voice grew louder. I sat there, breathless, my heart pounding, my mind racing. What had I done? The question echoed inside me, but I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I had betrayed not just my partner but also the version of myself I once believed I was: loyal, steadfast, unshakable. That person was gone, replaced by someone who had chosen desire over devotion. And yet, even as guilt wrapped itself around me, I couldn't deny the truth: I wanted more. The days that followed were a blur of contradiction. Outwardly, I lived the same life I always had, waking up beside my husband, preparing meals, keeping routines intact. Nothing seemed different on the surface, but inside everything had shifted. Every glance, every word, every silence between us carried the weight of what I had done. I could feel the betrayal pressing down on me, even though he didn't know. My smile felt heavier, my laughter forced, my affection rehearsed. And yet, in the quiet of my mind, there was another feeling running alongside the guilt, the memory of what it felt like to be wanted, alive, desired. I tried to convince myself it had been a mistake, a one-time weakness, something I could lock away and never repeat. But memory is cruel. It doesn't fade just because you want it to. Every detail stayed sharp, haunting me during the day and keeping me awake at night. I would replay the moment again and again, torn between shame and longing, disgusted with myself and yet unable to deny that a part of me wanted it all over again. That was the most painful truth. My betrayal wasn't only about what I had done, but about the part of me that wished for more. My husband remained oblivious, carrying on with life as though nothing had changed. He asked about my day, kissed me absent-mindedly before leaving for work, trusted me completely. His faithfulness became a mirror I couldn't look into without flinching. Every act of kindness from him was a reminder of how I had failed him, how I had stained what he still believed was pure. The guilt ate at me in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't just about fear of discovery. It was about the slow erosion of my own integrity, the quiet destruction of the person I thought I was. And yet, the secret connection didn't vanish. It lingered in messages that arrived when no one was looking, in excuses I made to cross paths, in the unspoken knowledge between us that what had happened could happen again. The danger of it only seemed to make it more tempting. Every stolen moment carried both thrill and dread, like walking a tightrope over a pit I couldn't afford to fall into. I told myself I could stop, that I had the power to end it, but each time I tried, the emptiness at home pulled me back into the memory of what filled it. The guilt was constant, but so was the desire. Living with both was like carrying fire in one hand and water in the other, each threatening to destroy me in different ways. I found myself wondering who I truly was, the loyal partner my husband believed me to be, or the betrayer I had proven myself to be in secret. The truth was, I was both, and that contradiction was unbearable. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe the truth will come out one day, shattering everything. Maybe it will remain hidden, a secret buried beneath the surface of my marriage. But even if no one else ever knows, I will always carry it with me. The choice I made, the line I crossed, the part of myself I can never take back. Betrayal doesn't always end in discovery. Sometimes the punishment is quieter. Sometimes it's the weight you carry alone, knowing that you are no longer who you once were, knowing that the person beside you trusts you with a faith you no longer deserve. That is the price of my decision. Not exposure. Not scandal. Just the heavy silence of guilt, and the knowledge that I can never return to the innocence I once had.